Back in July of 2009, okay, this is 4 years ago, roughly, 6 months into the first term of Obama's presidency, Louise and I were back in Michigan for our family reunion kind of annual hoop-de-doop picnic thing. And one of my brothers is a sport and target shooter, and we were visiting, and so, hey, let's go down and do some target practice, some target shooting. So we went to one of Central Michigan's biggest gun stores to buy some ammunition. Steve had guns. Actually, I rented a gun when I was there as well. And in fact, as I recall, I rented a .40 caliber Ruger. But in any case, this was this giant gun store. This is a gun store that was like the size of a mini Walmart. It was huge. It was big, right? They had hundreds, thousands of guns, and a wall full of ammunition, or a wall full of half-empty shelves that usually were overfilling with ammunition. And when we got to that store, the owner said he couldn't sell me more than 50 rounds. 50 rounds a person, maybe it was 100 rounds. It was some limit like that, basically a box. Maybe it was two. Because the store was running low on ammo. So I asked why the store was running low on ammo, and his response was along the lines of, because, I don't know how to say this, here this is pretty, verbatim recollection, because that N-word in the White House has taken all our guns away and people are stocking up. Now, this was 4 years ago. I was astounded. And I said, how do you know that he wants to take all your guns away? I didn't even deal with the obscenity. And he says, I got the emails to prove it. But the federal government is not only planning to take away everyone's guns, but that Obama is even planning on taking out people he doesn't like. This all took place 4 years ago. At that time, the government-hating gun store owner represented a fringe group in America, or maybe he wasn't the owner, an employee. And at that time, information about how the government was running out of control, way beyond the constraints the founders put into the Constitution, that kind of thing, that was pretty much the kind of talk that you heard on far-right extremist shortwave radio, on emails and websites, right-wing websites. And that was pretty much it. Well, times have changed. Now the gun nuts who are stocking up on ammo and forming right-wing extremist hate groups have the Attorney General of the United States telling them that he and the president reserve the right to kill them if he thinks they're a threat. Yes, you heard that right. Attorney General Eric Holder is not ruling out a scenario in which the president could order a drone strike against American citizens on U.S. soil. Now, his comments released Tuesday were prompted by questions raised over the nomination of John Brennan to head the CIA. Specifically, Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky had asked whether the Obama administration had considered using its drone policy domestically. In a letter to Senator Paul dated Monday, Holder said it was conceivable, quote, I suppose, he said, to foresee a, quote, extraordinary circumstance in which it would be necessary and appropriate, end quote, under U.S. law for the President of the United States to authorize the military to use lethal force, his phrase, within the United States. Responding to Holder's comments, now, actually, let me just go on a little farther. The example that Eric Holder gave was essentially if, we knew that the 9/11 planes were going to hit the trade towers and we could shoot them down over, he didn't say it in this kind of language. I'll read you the actual letter. But, we could shoot them down like, with that flight in Pennsylvania went down in Shanksville. That's something that we should have the power to do. In fact, here's how Holder phrased it. He said, the question you have posed is entirely hypothetical, unlikely to occur, and one we hope the president will never have to confront. It is possible, I suppose, to imagine an extraordinary circumstance in which it would be necessary and appropriate under the Constitution and applicable laws for the president to authorize the military to use lethal force within the United States. For example, the president could conceivably have no choice but to authorize the military to use such force if necessary to protect the homeland in the circumstances of a catastrophic attack like the one suffered on December 7th, 1941. In other words, shoot down the Japanese fleet as they're about to drop bombs on Pearl Harbor. And September 11th, 2001. In other words, shoot down those planes before they were able to strike the Pentagon or the White House and there's still a debate actually about whether that plane in Pennsylvania was shot down. Not so much a debate. There's still some discussion around the edges. But in any case, Senator Paul's response was that, okay, well, that's the obvious and easy stuff, but what about all the stuff in the middle? Responding to Holder's comments, Senator Paul issued a statement in part that said, the U.S. Attorney General's refusal to rule out the possibility of drone strikes on American citizens and on American soil is more than frightening. It is an affront on the constitutional due process right of all Americans. And I got to say, as much as I think Rand Paul is a crackpot, particularly his economic, on economics, Rand Paul is, crackpot off the scale. He's a libertarian. But on this issue, Senator Paul is right. Way back in June of 1878, following the Reconstruction era, or during the Reconstruction era, following the Civil War, Congress passed the Posse Comitatus Act. The intent of that act, which was a distant grandson of the Insurrection Act of 1807, was to limit the powers of the federal government when it came to using federal military personnel to enforce state laws against Americans on American soil. Basically, the Army can't turn its guns on citizens. The law was modified in 1981 to make it explicit that it was referring to the powers of the armed forces. The law was modified in 1981 to refer to the powers of the armed forces. In 2006, the Bush administration urged Congress to revoke Posse Comitatus so that U.S. armed forces could restore public order and enforce laws in the aftermath of natural disasters, terrorist attacks, or other, quote, conditions. Congress went along with Bush's request. They passed as part of the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Act, in 2007. So Obama comes in. And in 2012, they're putting together, every year they've got to reauthorize the military. This is in the Constitution. You can't let the military run more than 2 years without reauthorizing it. So in 2012, Obama said, put Posse Comitatus back in there. And they did in the NDAA of 2012. It was one of the actually good things that was done. But it had a loophole that military personnel could still be used to detain, quote, a person who was a part of or substantially supported al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces that are engaged in hostilities against the United States or its coalition partners, including any person who has committed a belligerent act or who has directly supported such hostilities in aid of such enemy forces. That's one pretty damn large loophole.